think that change in effect in the life cycle of software from, you know, a living, ongoing, evolving thing, which is, I think, that how most of us would tend to think of it these days, to, you know, the more project-focused worldview that certainly held sway for quite a long time, which is, we'll hire a development team, they'll build this project, then we'll roll them off, and it will go into maintenance mode.
Well, you know, a lot of books, and I read a lot of these, written in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, they're writing software to move to code stuff that was all people, right? That they're taking paper processes and moving them to software, which is a huge shift. But there is such a thing as new software. There, right? There was like this gap of all the things in the world that hadn't been software yet. And so there was like this quantity of code to write. Also, you didn't have a bunch of open source, you didn't have frameworks online everywhere. And so a lot more of what you needed, you wrote yourself. So there was more of an idea of breaking things apart and writing a lot of software. And we don't write that much code anymore. Relatively. But now everything that needed to be moved to software is in software. And so the software that we're writing is either modifications of that, replacements of that. That's a different rant. Or something entirely new.
Yes.
And the interesting part, of course, is this something entirely new. But the point is, there is a lot more ongoing improving of software now, because there's so much software in the world already. There's not this big gap where there's no software.
Yes. No, you've just voiced something that I believe for a while, which is that we are in a very, very different phase now. So in the early days, as you say, you know, writing software was mostly translating human processes that were already in place into, you know, a computerized version of those processes. So you had experts that knew how that stuff worked, and users that kind of had some view of what they wanted more clearly. We've done that. We've done that to an extent. I just in terms of the users knowing what they want. I remember in the mid to late 90s, one of my friends working on a project which was to introduce a Java-based system for an old mainframe system that just
that's fun.
Ran the payroll kind of thing. And he'd got all of these, they'd got armies of users kind of, you know, inputting data into these green screen terminals, and they were replacing it with this Java-based system, which in the late 90s was relatively slow, running in old browsers, but it was the cool thing to do. And and the users absolutely hated it, because they were absolutely flying on this mainframe system, because it really worked.
Because here's the socio-technical system again. Again, you're creating software for people who are adapted. The people know how to use the mainframe. They have a relationship with that mainframe. There's relevant knowledge in their heads, and you're invalidating all of that.
Yes.
And
you know, we've moved on from those days, but I think even then it was harder than we probably think. I think we've moved on a little bit, but I think the significant change is what you mentioned, in that largely we're either gluing existing things together, as you say. There's a lot of that going on, or we're doing something genuinely new these days. There's less of that work of just translating old you know, paper processes, because there aren't many old paper processes. There aren't as many these days. So that's different, and it also means that to some extent, certainly for the more innovative companies, there's even more exploratory work going on in terms of trying to figure out what the problem is to solve.